Hello, my friends. And today, new reports from the front once again confirm the loss of more settlements. Unfortunately, the Russians are gradually managing to push forward, but Zelensky said that Ukraine succeeded in disrupting Russia's offensive. At the same time, they are preparing two more waves of attacks this fall.
Mr. President, how are things on the front right now?
As I told you, in my opinion, we acted very timely. We disrupted three operations. The full-scale offensive operations were completely stopped. And the third one, I think, honestly, in a day or two we'll understand that they suffered heavy losses and failed to achieve their goals. But I need 1 or 2 more days before I can say that publicly. Yes, because our guys are still carrying out important actions in one direction right now. And the Russians are preparing to more offensive operations this fall. I believe things for Russia are going much worse than they expected. I'd put it this way, they are much worse than what they reported to Putin, and Putin doesn't even know it. I think he doesn't realize. Of course, there are reports and schedules, and at some point, he will see it all.
Also, today Putin announced that 100,000 troops are taking part in their military drills.
The exercises are being held at 41 training grounds. Around 100,000 servicemen are involved. About 10,000 units of weapons and equipment are engaged. And this is all modern equipment used in real combat operations. The training plans are built based on the experience gained in the so-called special military operation. As I said, 10,000 pieces of various equipment are involved, including 333 aircraft, tactical, strategic, and military transport aviation. More than 247 vessels are being used, surface ships, submarines, and support vessels. We have 25 foreign delegations attending the Zapad 2025 exercises.
Unfortunately, even US representatives visited Belarus to observe the drills, showing that they don't consider Russia an enemy. Now, let's move on to the situation along the front line. And today, let's start with the Kupiansk direction, where Ukrainian forces have released another video confirming that Russian forces are pushing further toward the central part of the city. The footage shows Ukrainian forces destroying Russians inside private homes, which means that the Russians are already trying to dig in them. And our troops are actively wiping them out. According to this video, it's already confirmed that about another 500 meters of the city have fallen under Russian control. On top of that, the gray zone is quickly expanding, making the situation catastrophic, while Russian activity continues to increase. Ukrainian soldiers themselves harshly criticized their official statements. The Russians keep advancing in Kupiansk, despite the clownish claims of the head of Kharkiv regional administration and the general staff about firm control over the city's outskirts. The Russians are already entrenching themselves inside Kupiansk and expanding their presence. Friends, be sure to write your thoughts on this in the comments. Meanwhile, in the Borova direction, assaults on Boguslavka continue, but activity here remains low and the front line hasn't changed. In the Lyman direction, the Russians are storming Zarychne, pushing near Kolodezi, and assaulting Stavky, Dробышево, Shandrigolove, and Serednye, while also advancing toward Olhivka. Russian activity here is extremely high, and there are even reports claiming that Shandrigolove has fallen under Russian control. However, these reports haven't yet been confirmed, so we'll have to wait and see how events develop. In the Siversk direction, the Russians are storming Yampil, Dronivka and Serebryanka, and advancing near Gregorivka. Russian sabotage and reconnaissance groups entered Yampil, but according to preliminary information, they were destroyed and no new Russian breakthroughs into the settlement have been recorded. For now, the front line here remains unchanged. In the Kostiantynivka direction, the Russians are pushing near Chasiv Yar, storming Stupochki, Alexandro Shultine, Pleshiyivka, and Klebanbyk, and advancing toward the village of Berestok and the Poltavka area. At the same time, Ukrainian fighters report that Russian sabotage groups have indeed begun pushing toward Kostiantynivka. In the area of the Dachas, located right in front of the city's southeastern outskirts, Russian sabotage groups are operating, constantly maneuvering through garden plots and scouting approach routes. Our fighters are keeping them under strict control, with everything under sight. The key task is to prevent the Russians from massing forces. If they manage to gather a frame, isolated raids into Kostiantynivka's private sector with sudden attacks and sabotage could follow. The immediate task is to keep the Dacha area under tight reconnaissance, prevent resupply, especially at night, block access routes, and respond quickly to any gatherings. Meanwhile, the Russians have advanced along the highway east of the city and entrenched themselves at a stronghold near Stupochka. Thus, Ukrainian forces are effectively confirming that the situation here has worsened, although no official statements have been made. In the Dobropillia direction, the Russians continue trying to push forward and are reported to be storming the village of Zoloty Kolodys. They are also attacking Vilne, Nikanorivka and Volodymyrivka. However, over the past day, they haven't managed to advance, and Ukrainian forces are repelling all assaults. In the Pokrovsk direction, the Russians are storming Rodinsk and Krasny Lyman, pushing toward Mirnograd and attacking Novoekonomichne, Promень, and the southern outskirts of Mirnograd. They're also advancing in the areas of Dachinske, Chunishine, Zvierove, Kotline, and Udachne, while storming Molodetske and Novopidgorodny. Overall, the situation here is extremely difficult, but no new changes have been recorded over the past 24 hours. In the Novopavlivka direction, the Russians are pushing toward the city across the fields, storming Dachne, Filia, Ivanivka, and Iskra, while also advancing toward Alexandrograd. In recent days, the front here has been shifting actively, so the situation continues to worsen. In the Pokrovske direction, the situation isn't any better. Besides attacks near Ternove and Novoivanivka, the Ukrainian forces report that Berezove is most likely no longer under Ukrainian control. So, the settlement of Berezove is shown in the gray zone, which means either our forces are already gone from there or the Russians are conducting stabilization actions that are approaching the final stage. Of course, I could be wrong. Let's take a more objective look at the situation tomorrow. That means the situation here is developing rapidly, and the fate of this village will be decided very soon. So the front here is also not standing still and is gradually deteriorating. An evacuation of part of Dnipropetrovsk region has already been announced. Ukrainian fighters say things are very bad here. Dnipropetrovsk region. As you understand, the Russians in the area of responsibility will continue to advance toward the R85 road. Controlling this highway gives them a strategic advantage, the ability to speed up supplies, move reserves, and create operational bridgeheads for a further offensive. The villages around Pokrovske are in immediate danger because of the Russian approach and the expected intensive use of artillery and aviation. An urgent evacuation has been announced. Time is short. Residents have only a minimal buffer to get out, and many houses risk being seriously destroyed. We therefore need a fast, centralized fire strike capability and a mobile firefighting group to hold approaches and respond instantly to breakthroughs. At the same time, full mobilization of evacuation support for civilians. Time decides everything. I'll say again, although this pisses me off, the Pokrovske administration is building roads outside the settlement and installing communications towers. Life goes on. The military civil administration doesn't give a damn. I want to scream at this chaos, but it is what it is. The traitors will get what's coming. In the Gulay-Pole direction, the Russians are assaulting Poltavka and trying to push through near Olgivsk. But no new changes have been recorded over the past 24 hours. For now, the Ukrainian forces continue to repel all attacks. In the Zaporizhia direction, the Russians are pushing toward Stepnohirsk and Novodanilivka across the fields. At the same time as before, there are no official confirmations that Russian forces have entered Stepnohirsk, although they claim to have entrenched themselves on the outskirts. Ukrainian fighters released a video showing them destroying the Russians here. So we'll have to wait for official statements on this matter. In the Kherson direction, the Russians continue their attacks on the islands, making several attempts per day to push closer to the right bank. For now, however, the Ukrainian forces are smashing them, and there are no changes on the ground. Still, shelling of the right bank continues at its usual pace. Now moving to the border situation. In the area of Velike Burluk, the Russians are assaulting Ambarne and Odradne and attempting breakthroughs near Krasne Pershe. But over the past 24 hours, they've had no success and the situation remains unchanged. In the Kharkiv direction, no new assaults have been recorded and the frontline situation remains unchanged. In Vovchansk, fighting continues with the Russians increasing the activity. They are attempting to break through near the village of Tykhe and Vovchansky Hutory. So far, however, there are no changes over the past 24 hours. In the Sumy direction, and the Russians are pushing near Oleksievka, Bilovody, and Yunakivka. But no major changes have occurred, and the Ukrainian forces continue to successfully repel all attacks. And Zelensky said that there is no point in trying to persuade Putin to stop the war, only strength works.
He's at war, and everyone tries to convince him to stop. People keep asking him, what's needed is force. He understands force. That's his language. He may not speak many languages, but force is completely clear to him, just like Russian. So we have to communicate in that way. It's a dialect of the person he is. And yes, we are asking. The United States can do this. Europeans can do this. And Europeans, together with the United States, are taking steps, it's true. Sanction steps, but more is needed.
Meanwhile, the UN Secretary General said that the war won't end soon because the positions of the parties are too far apart.
I am not optimistic about a short-term progress in the peace process in the Ukraine. Our position is very clear. We need an immediate ceasefire, but a ceasefire that leads to a solution based on the UN Charter, international law, and the resolutions of the General Assembly. The positions of both sides are now largely incompatible. And after the Russian invasion of the Ukraine, we have seen that the Russian Federation has resisted strongly to the idea of a ceasefire, and saying that a global agreement is necessary, and we all know how difficult it is to achieve. So I am afraid we might witness this war to go on, at least for some time, and to go on now with a violence that is particularly dramatic because it's having a huge impact on civilians.
And today, Zelensky said he's willing to meet with Putin in any format.
You mentioned potential test meetings. Are you ready to meet with Trump and Putin without any conditions?
Yes, President Trump proposed a bilateral meeting, then a trilateral one. He said in Washington during our last meetings, let's work in this format. He wanted a bilateral format to exchange thoughts or complaints first, then a trilateral one. I told him, I support any format proposed by the United States of America, because as I understand it, the format proposed by the US and supported by Ukraine, and if Russia does not support it, then the US will take strong steps against Putin, meaning sanctions and weapons. So I said without any conditions, I support a bilateral or trilateral format.
So you're ready to meet without any conditions. Would you go to Moscow for such a meeting?
No, of course not. That's not a condition, it's the situation. Russia attacked us. I cannot go to a country, to a city like Moscow, that is attacking us. You can't just go there under their missiles, but we can meet in any other country. Some of these options are agreed upon by Americans, Europeans, and of course by me. But the question now is addressed to Russia. They haven't responded.
What do you think about this? Would you want a Zelensky-Putin meeting to take place even in Moscow? Or should it always be on a neutral ground? Share your thoughts in the comments. And that's all from me. So please don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell to stay updated on all the latest news. Thank you for watching and see you next time. Bye bye.